Your life mirrors the thoughts you feed it. When you shift the way you think, the direction of your life shifts with it. Around 85% of people face periods of low self-esteem tied to persistent negative self-talk. That number alone should make us stop and seriously examine what's happening in our inner world. Today, we're diving into a subject that is as uncomfortable as it is life-changing: eliminating your negative thinking. This isn't simply about quieting the voice that criticizes you, it's about reclaiming your inner strength so you can live a life driven by clarity and purpose. In Stoic philosophy, we find a powerful truth. Our thoughts aren't harmless murmurs drifting across the mind. They are commanding forces that influence our peace, our joy, and our suffering. Stoicism teaches that while the outside world refuses to obey our desires, the way we interpret it is entirely ours to control. The Stoics were far more than ancient thinkers. They were mental warriors, constantly fighting against the chaos of unregulated emotions and uncontrolled thoughts by choosing logic, calmness, and discipline. Today, I'm here to walk you through how negative thinking shapes your life and to share practical Stoic tools you can use to dismantle it. We'll learn how to direct the power of the mind to build a life not trapped by negativity, but driven by the virtues of wisdom, courage, discipline, and justice. If any part of this challenges what you believe, I urge you to stay with me. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but it could also open a door to growth you never expected. Before we begin, share this video with anyone you know who's walking a path of personal development or exploring deeper ideas. And if the insights we explore together inspire you, the simplest way to support this journey into Stoicism is by subscribing. Now, let's begin. Understanding the problem. Negative thinking isn't just a rare annoyance or a passing mood. It's a deeply rooted pattern that affects every area of our daily lives. From the emotions we wake up with to the decisions we make about our work, health, relationships, and future, these thoughts shape everything, and they can be exhausting. But what exactly is negative thinking? At its core, it's a mental habit that expects the worst, minimizes our strengths, and convinces us we're less capable than we actually are. So why do we fall into this mental trap? The Stoics believed that it's never the events themselves that trouble us, but the meaning we attach to those events. Epictetus famously said, "Men are disturbed not by things but by the view which they take of them." This is the key to understanding negative thinking. Most of the time, it's not reality holding us back, it's the filter we're looking through. Carl Jung's work on the human psyche supports this idea. Much of our negative thinking rises from the hidden parts of the mind, the unconscious forces we haven't fully examined. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When we shine light on these buried beliefs, we weaken their ability to shape our lives without permission. Think about how this plays out in daily situations. When faced with a challenge, negative thinking makes us feel defeated before we even try. It stops us from taking the actions that could lead to success. It's like rowing a boat with all your strength but never noticing the anchor still tied to the shore. No matter how hard you work, you stay stuck. Stoicism teaches us to challenge our thoughts with honesty and reason, to question whether these negative beliefs are even true. Marcus Aurelius reminds us again and again in his meditations to examine our thoughts carefully and discard the ones that are irrational or destructive. This kind of reflection helps us detach from negative patterns and take back control of our mental landscape. We also need to consider the world we're living in. Our society is filled with messages telling us we're not enough, not successful enough, not wealthy enough, not talented enough. These messages create fertile ground for self-doubt, and before we realize it, negativity begins to grow like weeds choking our potential. But Stoicism gives us the tools to pull these weeds out and replace them with healthier, more empowering thoughts. Negative thinking isn't something we escape by ignoring it. We must understand it, question it, and transform it. The Stoic approach isn't about surviving, it's about flourishing. When we master our thoughts, we master our perception, and when we master our perception, we master our lives. As we move forward, remember this: every thought you accept and every thought you challenge is shaping the life you're building. One thought at a time, you get closer to the life you truly want. Understanding where negative thinking comes from is crucial if we want to confront it effectively. This isn't only about spotting harmful habits, it's about revealing the deeper roots that shape how we perceive the world and influence the landscape of our mind. Negative thoughts usually grow from many sources: our childhood environment, social expectations, past disappointments, and even small remarks from people around us. Each of these can plant seeds of doubt, fear, and limitation that gradually develop into a long-standing habit of negativity. From an early age, many of us are placed in environments that don't always nurture healthy self-esteem. Think of a child constantly told they aren't good enough, or a school system that rewards only flawless achievement. These experiences can heavily shape our worldview. Aristotle once said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an isolated act but a habit. When we apply this idea to our thinking, we see that repeated negative thoughts can turn into a habit of seeing ourselves and our abilities in a lesser, dimmer way. Our own moments of failure and rejection also reinforce these negative patterns. Every time we stumble or face criticism, it strengthens that inner voice that whispers, "I knew I couldn't succeed." Over time, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, not because we lack talent or strength, but because we start behaving in ways that match our negative beliefs. Plato's idea that the mind creates our reality, and that changing the mind can change the reality, becomes deeply relevant here. By examining and questioning how we interpret our failures, we can begin dismantling the very foundation on which negative thinking rests. Fear, too, plays a major role in nurturing negative thought patterns. Fear is a natural defense mechanism, but it often intensifies into excessive worry or anxiety that overshadows our ability to think clearly. Fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, and fear of rejection can all lead to catastrophic thinking, where the mind immediately assumes the worst outcome. Stoicism offers a counter-strategy through the practice of premeditation of evils, visualizing the worst possible scenario in detail so that when or if it happens, its emotional hold on us is weakened. Carl Jung emphasized that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will shape our lives without our awareness, and we will mistake its influence for fate. Many negative thoughts originate from unconscious beliefs formed early in life, shaped by parents, teachers, culture, and media. These beliefs often go unchallenged simply because we aren't fully aware of them. Bringing these hidden beliefs into conscious awareness strips them of their power and gives us the ability to take back control of our thought patterns. And then there are the cultural and social pressures that surround us. We live in a world that emphasizes scarcity, competition, and extremely high standards that feel impossible to meet. This environment encourages constant comparison and fosters the feeling that we are never enough. Stoicism directs us to shift our attention from external judgment to internal virtues, reminding us that real success lies in personal growth rather than comparison with others. The roots of negative thinking are diverse and deeply layered, shaped by personal history, emotional experiences, ingrained fears, and societal messages. Yet by using insights from both Western philosophy and psychology, especially the Stoic commitment to managing our perceptions and reactions, we can begin to identify and untangle these negative patterns. This deeper understanding doesn't just lessen their impact, it equips us to rebuild our mental framework into one that is stronger, healthier, and more resilient. Renew your mind. When we speak about renewing our minds, we're not referring to a temporary effort to think positive. What we're aiming for is a deep, lasting transformation, our inner dialogue. This is about cultivating a mindset that allows us not merely to endure life, but to truly thrive in it. The Stoic philosophers provide timeless guidance on achieving this renewal through disciplined reflection and intentionally shaping our thoughts to create resilience and inner peace. A core principle of Stoicism is the belief that our emotions and reactions arise from our judgments, and these judgments fall within our control. Marcus Aurelius, both emperor and philosopher, once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This profound insight reminds us that true renewal begins by reclaiming authority over our thoughts, examining them for truth, and bringing them into harmony with our values and intentions. Aristotle offers another important perspective. He wrote, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." This journey inward requires us to analyze our thought patterns, noticing which ones support our growth and which hinder it. As we become more aware of our internal dialogue, we develop the ability to challenge the negative thoughts that may have become deeply ingrained. This isn't about suppressing emotions, but about understanding them more fully so we can manage them with clarity and purpose. Carl Jung's psychological insights beautifully complement Stoic teachings. Jung believed that what we resist doesn't disappear, it becomes stronger. Instead of trying to push negative thoughts away, Stoicism teaches us to acknowledge them, understand their origins, and question their truth. By doing this, we prevent them from hiding within the unconscious, where they can grow without restraint. Renewing the mind also requires intentionally engaging with materials and activities that promote growth. This might include reading philosophical texts that push us to think deeper, experiencing art that inspires reflection, or simply spending quiet time in meditation. These activities introduce new ideas and perspectives that help replace old, limiting narratives. Socrates' insistence on living an examined life is central here. By continually evaluating our beliefs and the thoughts born from them, we participate in an ongoing process of mental renewal that keeps us mentally agile and aligned with our ideals. This continual self-examination isn't just something we do occasionally, it becomes a way of life, keeping our inner world clear, fresh, and grounded in truth. Plato's philosophy of aligning with the forms, the pure ideals of justice, goodness, and beauty, also parallels this idea. Renewing the mind means aspiring to align our thoughts with the highest versions of ourselves. By striving toward these ideals, we build an identity that is strong, compassionate, and wise. To put this into practice, we might begin each day with a meaningful affirmation or a Stoic reflection that sets the tone for the mental environment we wish to cultivate. Whether it's an Epictetus quote reminding us of the power of our response, or a Jung-inspired reminder to face our inner shadows with courage, these small daily rituals become the foundational steps of a renewed mind. Surround yourself with positivity. This principle involves intentionally choosing environments, people, and influences that support our mental and emotional well-being. Seneca famously advised, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." This guidance encourages us to be discerning about the company we keep and to build relationships that uplift, inspire, and challenge us to grow. Aristotle also reflected on the influence of the people around us when he categorized friendships into three types: those of utility, those of pleasure, and those of the good. Friendships of the good, based on mutual admiration of each other's virtues, are the most valuable. These relationships help us become better versions of ourselves because they are built on a shared commitment to excellence and integrity. Plato's allegory of the cave further shows how our environment shapes our perception. The prisoners in the cave believed the shadows on the wall were reality because that was all they had ever seen. When one escapes and sees the real world, he realizes how limited his understanding had been. This story illustrates how expanding our surroundings to include positive, enlightening influences can transform our understanding and enrich our lives. Carl Jung's ideas about the collective unconscious also highlight the importance of our environment. Jung believed that our psyche is influenced by shared cultural memories and archetypes. By choosing positive, supportive environments, we can influence the archetypes that shape our personal narratives, shifting from those rooted in fear or inadequacy toward ones that embody strength, confidence, and self-realization. In practice, surrounding ourselves with positivity means far more than simply being around cheerful individuals. It means engaging with content, communities, and activities that reinforce our personal and philosophical goals. It means participating in spaces, online or offline, where conversations encourage growth, reflection, and constructive dialogue instead of criticism and negativity. It requires us to remain vigilant about the media we consume, choosing books, films, and programs that enlighten and uplift, rather than those that fuel fear, hopelessness, or negativity. It also means intentionally creating environments, both at home and at work, that reflect the virtues and values we admire. This might be as simple as maintaining a clean and orderly living space, which, according to Stoic practice, mirrors a calm and organized mind. Or it could involve filling our surroundings with art, symbols, and reminders of our philosophical commitments, courage, justice, moderation, and wisdom. Seneca's words continue to resonate when he writes, "Hang on to your youthful enthusiasms, you'll be able to use them better when you're older." By surrounding ourselves with positivity, we are essentially preserving or cultivating enthusiasms that align with our higher nature. Doing this not only enriches our own lives, but also sets an example for those around us, creating a ripple effect of positivity that extends beyond ourselves. Take Stoic action. As we move forward in our journey to conquer negative thinking, the Stoics remind us that understanding and intention by themselves are insufficient. Action is essential. Epictetus expressed this with striking clarity. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. This simple yet profound instruction captures a core Stoic principle. Our ideals must be expressed through action, not merely contemplated in thought. Taking action in the Stoic sense means deliberately engaging in behaviors that reinforce our philosophical values. It involves making conscious choices every day that reflect wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. By living out these virtues through our actions, we confront and weaken the negative thoughts that insist we are incapable or unworthy. In doing so, we rewrite our internal narrative into one of strength, competence, and self-belief. Aristotle also highlights the importance of action through his doctrine of the mean, which teaches that virtue is not just a mindset but a character developed through consistent practice, choosing the middle ground between excess and deficiency. This is an active process. For Aristotle, we become just by performing just actions, brave by acting bravely, and temperate by practicing temperance. Thus, action does more than demonstrate virtue. It is the very process through which virtue is formed. Plato's theory of forms also illuminates the transformative nature of action. He suggested that to truly know the good is to do the good. In other words, once we genuinely understand what is right and virtuous, right action naturally follows. By aligning our actions with our Stoic understanding of virtue, we draw ourselves closer to the Platonic ideal of the good, uplifting not only our thoughts but our entire being. Carl Jung's concept of individuation, the psychological journey of uniting the conscious and unconscious elements of the self, further emphasizes the necessity of action. Jung believed this integration does not occur through reflection alone, but through real experiences and challenges in the outer world that force us to confront and refine our internal structures. He insisted, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do," underscoring the truth that our character and psychological maturity are ultimately revealed through our actions. Stoic action is not limited to resisting negative thoughts. It is a commitment to actively living the virtues at the heart of Stoicism. It means making both subtle, and significant choices that reflect dedication to self-growth and philosophical integrity. Whether you choose to speak with kindness during a difficult moment, confront a fear you have avoided for years, or extend forgiveness to someone who caused you harm, every decision becomes a deliberate step toward becoming the person you strive to be. Taking Stoic action also means welcoming life's challenges as catalysts for transformation. Instead of retreating from hardship, Stoics see each test as a training ground for virtue. Every obstacle becomes an invitation to demonstrate resilience, to practice patience, and to reaffirm your devotion to your principles. Practically speaking, acting stoically might involve setting daily goals aligned with your values, giving time to community service that nurtures justice and compassion, or maintaining practices such as journaling and meditation that deepen self-awareness and self-regulation. These actions not only counter negative thinking but strengthen you into a more virtuous version of yourself. Stoic philosophy teaches that our speech, just like our actions, reveals our virtues. Words hold immense influence in shaping how we think, feel, and behave. Epictetus said, "First learn the meaning of what you say and then speak." His insight reminds us of the profound weight words carry. They do not only reflect our inner state, they can transform it. The Stoics knew that language has the power to fortify or weaken the inner stronghold of our minds. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on speaking with truth and intention, urging that our words embody honesty, restraint, and kindness. By aligning our language with our virtues, we reinforce our Stoic practice and radiate that influence outward. Aristotle added further depth with his ideas of ethos, pathos, and logos, credibility, emotional resonance, and logic. He emphasized that the words we choose do more than communicate. They persuade, inspire, and shape the world around us. Plato's dialogues exemplify the precision and power of speech, showing how Socrates used thoughtful questioning to dismantle assumptions and reveal deeper truths. Plato reminds us that dialogue, approached with care, guides others and ourselves toward clarity and understanding. Psychologically, Carl Jung's work echoes this Stoic emphasis on mindful speech. Jung understood that language reflects and shapes the unconscious forces driving our behavior. He believed that by bringing these unconscious impulses into awareness through honest dialogue, we become more psychologically integrated and whole. This extends to our inner speech as well. The words we use when talking to ourselves influence our identity and emotional stability. Negative self-talk, which nearly everyone experiences, can shatter confidence, drain motivation, and amplify helplessness. Positive self-talk, rooted in Stoic principles, has the opposite effect, strengthening, elevating, and empowering. Modern cognitive behavioral therapies rely on this same principle with affirmations, not as unrealistic fantasies, but as reminders of the resilience and control we possess. By affirming our ability to choose our responses and live by our values, we strengthen our inner foundation. The power of words in Stoicism is not abstract, it is deeply practical. It touches our conversations, our inner dialogues, and the way we relate to the world around us. Every word carries weight. It can build or destroy, clarify or confuse, heal or harm. As we grow in Stoic virtue, we must remain conscious of how our words shape ourselves, influence others, and help create a world guided by reason, virtue, and wisdom. Thank you for walking with us through this deep exploration of Stoic philosophy. Remember, the words you choose and the actions you take carve the path toward a life rooted in purpose and virtue. As you move through life's complexities, let Stoic wisdom steady your mind, turning every hardship into a chance to become stronger. Every human being, no matter how composed they appear, carries an inner storm, thoughts, doubts, fears, unfinished conversations that never escape the mind. You can be surrounded by people who seem fine, productive, and confident, yet inside feel like you're holding yourself together with trembling hands. This doesn't make you weak, It simply means the world never taught you how to guard your mind. We learn to pursue goals, work harder, and endure hardship, but not how to be still, how to release what weighs us down, or how to think clearly when everything feels urgent, loud, and overwhelming. But what if? The clarity you seek isn't something to hunt for outside, but something hidden within you. What if peace isn't the disappearance of problems, but the presence of a wiser perspective? The Stoics believed real power begins with mastery of the mind. When left unchecked, thoughts become shackles, but when understood, they become tools. And today, that is the journey we're taking, clearing mental clutter, calming the internal chaos, and helping you reconnect not only with what matters, but with what liberates you. If your path is toward mental clarity, inner strength, and becoming someone unshaken by life's storms, consider subscribing for your highest self, because the mind you cultivate becomes the life you create. Most people move through life assuming that every thought they have must be true, that if a thought appears, it must hold meaning, value, or reality. But your mind is not a courtroom, and your thoughts are not evidence. They are merely echoes, reflections of past wounds, fears, memories, and interpretations. They wear your voice because they've lived inside your head for so long. They mimic your tone because they've memorized your patterns. But a thought sounding like you does not mean it speaks your truth. You are not the thought. You are the witness behind it. And when you realize that, even briefly, everything shifts you. Stop getting dragged by every internal storm. You stop treating every fear as prophecy. You begin to notice the quiet space between what happens and how you respond. And inside that space lives something extraordinary, choice. You can choose not to follow old inner narratives that only hurt you. You can choose to pause before spiraling. You can choose not to turn someone else's rejection into your identity. This may seem simple, but it is where real transformation begins. Without that space, without that pause, you remain stuck in a loop, reacting instead of responding, surviving instead of living. When you stop mistaking your thoughts for facts, the entire battlefield of your mind changes. You shift from absorbing to observing, and with observation, the noise that once controlled you begins to quiet. Many people spend years trying to fix themselves when the only thing broken was the belief that their thoughts were true. I'm not good enough. They don't care about me. I'll always be this way. These are not truths. They are sentences repeated for so long that they began to feel real. Feelings are not facts, and thoughts are not identities. You are not the anxiety that rises in a crowded room. You are not the memory that resurfaces when you're alone. You are not the fear that whispers right before you attempt something new. You are the one witnessing all of this. And in that simple noticing, you hold the power to detach, to step back, and to take a breath. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That single idea can transform a life because it reminds you that you are not bound by your past, not permanently shaped by trauma, and not condemned to carry the same pain forever. The thoughts born from old wounds do not need to become the script you follow. They can pass through your awareness like drifting clouds across a quiet sky, if you allow them. But to do that, you must stop chasing them, stop debating them, and stop fearing them. You must learn to observe them calmly, patiently, and without judgment. Only when you see your thoughts clearly can you respond with wisdom. Mastering your mind is not about operating it like a machine. It's about tending to it like a garden. Weeds grow without permission, patterns you never asked for, beliefs you never intentionally accepted. But once you recognize them, you get to choose whether they stay. Bit by bit, you begin creating space for something deliberate and meaningful. Clarity is not the absence of thought, it is the understanding that not every thought deserves your attention. Peace is not an empty mind, it is the discipline to avoid feeding every impulse that appears. And that discipline is born from awareness. In the beginning, the mental noise may get louder when you stop responding to it. That's normal. That is withdrawal from the habits that have governed your inner world for so long. But in time, quiet returns. Not an empty quiet, but a quiet filled with yourself. The real you. The part of you untouched by moods, unaffected by temporary worries, unshaken by waves of self-doubt. The part that remains after the storm passes. This shift doesn't happen instantly, but even a single moment of space, even 1 second where you see a thought without being swallowed by it, is a win. It's a crack in the wall where the light enters, and the more often you create that space, the less you function on autopilot. You start catching yourself in real time. You begin making conscious choices instead of emotional reactions. You begin to live your life rather than simply endure your thoughts. And that shift changes everything. Clarity does not come from thinking harder. It comes from thinking less and observing more. It arises from the space you create between who you are and what your mind claims you are. That space is where your strength exists. It's where your focus returns. It's where your energy stops drifting into endless what-if scenarios and begins flowing toward who you are, becoming. Life starts to feel lighter, not because the thoughts disappear, but because they lose their authority over you. So the next time your mind presents a painful story, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this really who I am? Or is this just something I've heard so many times that I started believing it? Then choose whether it deserves your energy. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's just noise. And now you're learning to listen without identifying with it. That's how clarity begins, not by silencing the mind, but by elevating yourself above the noise. Awareness rarely arrives as a dramatic awakening. It usually begins quietly, in the small moment when you notice a familiar thought, the same one that has appeared 1,000 times before. But this time, instead of following it into its usual spiral, you simply notice it. You don't react. And in that moment something shifts. You simply pause and watch, almost like you are observing someone else's story unfold on the screen inside your mind. And in that small shift something remarkable takes place. You stop participating in the noise and instead become the witness to it. That small space between thinking and observing is where awareness is born. Not as some dramatic breakthrough, but as a gentle and steady unfolding. And the more often you allow yourself to sit with your mind instead of trying to resist it, fix it, or escape it, the more clearly you begin to see it for what it truly is. Not a beast to fear, but a messenger to understand. In the beginning, the thoughts still show up. The doubts, the fears, the memories. But they land differently. They no longer knock you down the way they once did. Because you are no longer trapped inside them. You are beside them, watching them, noticing their origins, their timing, their tone. You begin to realize that certain thoughts only appear when you are exhausted. Others emerge only when you are lonely or unsure. Some thoughts belong to old narratives you never intentionally chose yet carried for years, and suddenly it becomes clear that these thoughts were never random. They were patterns, cycles, scripts, repeating themselves so many times that they blended into the background of your mind. And now that you can finally see them for what they are, they start losing their authority. What once felt like undeniable truth begins to feel like repetition. That familiar thought telling you that you are not enough no longer lands as a fact. It sounds like an echo. And like any echo, it continues only if you keep shouting into the same empty space. But you do not have to continue replying. You can let the echo fade. Awareness means understanding that you do not need to answer every mental call that rings inside your head. You can let it ring, you can allow it to pass, and with each unanswered call, the chain that kept you bound grows weaker. Still, awareness is not about going to war with your thoughts. That is where so many people struggle, thinking the goal is to silence the mind or erase a thought completely. But the mind does not function that way. It is not about elimination, it is about illumination. Once you bring something into the light, it no longer has the same grip on you, because when you observe something clearly without running or judging, you transform your relationship to it. And that transformation is the gateway to freedom. When awareness is absent, those imagined scenarios feel urgent and real. Your muscles tighten, your breath shortens, and you react. But with awareness, you interrupt the entire cycle. You notice the tension and follow it back to its source. You question its root. You recognize that the fear consuming you today is simply a relative of the fear that gripped you yesterday and the day before, and the moment you clearly identify the pattern, you rise above it. You are no longer inside the storm. You are watching it from higher ground. There is something deeply empowering about recognizing that you do not need to accept every thought that crosses your mind. Familiar does not equal true. A voice telling you that you are not doing enough, or healing fast enough, or becoming enough, does not mean that voice is correct. Often, it is just residue from a chapter that ended long ago and has no place in your present story, and the more you observe without reacting, the more easily you separate what is actually happening from what your mind is projecting. But this takes practice. You will not master it instantly. Some thoughts will still drag you in, some memories will still strike hard. But even after those moments, you can step back and ask with gentleness, what was really happening inside me then? That question alone, asked without criticism, is awareness. And as those moments accumulate, the knotted patterns of your mind slowly begin to loosen. You start recognizing the themes more easily. This is the familiar fear of failure. Here is the part of me that fears silence. This is the voice that rises when I feel abandoned. And slowly, through patience and presence, you teach your mind a new way to respond. Stillness begins to grow where chaos once lived. The moment your truth is finally spoken, even softly, it begins to lose its quiet power over you. But even if you're not ready to voice it, you can still confront it. Even a single deep, honest breath, one where you acknowledge what you feel without spinning it into a story, is a step forward. Sometimes the body releases what the mind is still holding. Grief, anger, guilt, these aren't just ideas in your head. They live in your chest, in your shoulders, in your gut, and the more space you allow them to rise, move, and pass through, the lighter you become. Not because they disappear, but because you are no longer alone with them. You meet them, you witness them, you listen. Aristotle said that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But self-knowledge isn't just intellectual, it's emotional, spiritual, energetic. It means sitting with the parts of yourself you once ran from, recognizing they aren't as terrifying as you imagined. They've only been waiting for you to stop pretending. They weren't there. Unspoken pain isolates. It convinces you that you're the only one carrying a weight too heavy to name. But when you bring even a flicker of it into the light, you realize countless others carry their own silent burdens. And in that realization, your suffering transforms. It no longer separates you, it connects you. And in that connection, a new strength emerges, a strength rooted in honesty, not performance. There is no shame in struggling. There is no flaw in having something to say and not knowing how. The struggle only grows heavier when you insist on hiding it, but you don't have to. You are allowed to speak, to write, to feel. You are allowed to let the thoughts that never had a voice finally be heard. Until you do, they linger, whispering in the background, diverting your focus, dulling your clarity. But once you release them, even imperfectly, they start to lose shape. A storm becomes a cloud, a wall becomes a door, and beyond that door lies light. Not perfect peace, but space, breath, possibility, and most importantly, freedom to move forward. Some pain doesn't shout. It lingers, quiet and persistent. It's the ache of moments that should have ended long ago but remain alive in your mind as if they happened yesterday. You find yourself replaying the same conversations, the same mistakes, the same losses, not because they deserve it, but because a part of you still hopes to rewrite them. You tell yourself, maybe this time I'll understand. Maybe this time it will hurt less, but it doesn't, it never does. Because the past cannot be altered. Only your relationship to it can. It's a strange habit we have, reopening old wounds in search of peace. But often, that revisiting doesn't heal, it erodes. Each replay tears open the old moment, hoping to extract something new, but the moment has passed. The words were said, the silence fell. What remains is only the echo, and echoes only hurt if you mistake them for the present. You cannot build focus in a mind haunted by ghosts. The brain, remarkable as it is, can only hold so much attention. When you are constantly dragged back into old regrets, little energy remains for clarity. You cannot be present when part of you is anchored in the past. The irony is that most of what we obsess over cannot be changed, and yet we allow it to consume us, blurring the present and obscuring what is right in front. You are not trapped because of what happened. You are trapped because you have not yet let go of what never gave you peace. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it didn't matter. It means refusing to grant it the power to define you. It means no longer trying to extract new meaning from a chapter that has already ended. You allow the wound to heal, not because it wasn't deep, but because you deserve to stop bleeding. That choice, that act of release, is often the first true step toward mental freedom. Epictetus reminds us people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. It is not what occurred that causes suffering, but the grip we continue to hold on it. Sometimes we cling to old pain thinking it protects us. We tell ourselves that remembering will prevent repetition, that holding on is wisdom, but memory is not protection. Awareness is. You don't need to bear the full weight of the past to learn from it. You don't need to relive it to honor its lesson. And you certainly don't need to let it silently run your life from behind the scenes. Forgiveness, particularly of yourself, is not weakness. It is discipline. It requires courage to say, I did the best I could with what I knew then. Now I choose to move forward. Forgiving others is no easier. Some people won't recognize the harm they caused. Some will never change. But carrying their actions like stones only keeps you shackled. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. It's a declaration to your mind that you are no longer required to carry their burden. You release the echo so that your own voice can finally be heard again. The part of yourself buried beneath all the noise is the one that truly matters. Because clarity cannot grow in soil where resentment has taken root. Some will claim that letting go is avoidance, but true release is not denial. It is facing the memory, honoring it, and choosing not to let it consume another hour of your life. It is stepping out of the mental loop that insists if you keep thinking about it, you'll discover something new. You won't. What you will find is fatigue, paralysis, disconnection from the present moment, and perhaps most importantly, you risk missing the life that's trying to bloom while your gaze remains fixed on what has already withered. Ask yourself, how much longer will you let yesterday sabotage today? How long will you trade your peace for pain that's already been paid? Letting go is not erasing the past. It's rewriting your relationship with it. It's learning to look back and feel differently, not because the past has changed, but because you have. In that shift, in that inner decision to stop bleeding from the same wound, focus returns, energy returns, life returns. Letting go doesn't always arrive as a grand gesture. Sometimes it is subtle. A thought arises and you breathe instead of reacting. A memory surfaces and you choose to observe it rather than relive it. You begin speaking to yourself with greater kindness. You stop repeating the same story over and over. And one day you realize it no longer weighs on you. It is not gone, but it no longer holds you hostage. So when the mind echoes familiar pain, pause, recognize it, remind yourself, this is not the present, this is not your identity, this is merely a thought, not a life sentence. You have already walked through the fire. You do not need to sit in the smoke any longer. Let the echo fade and turn your attention to what is here now, the breath, the stillness, the chance to begin again, clear, focused, free. There is a voice that follows you, not from the outside, but from within. It does not shout, it whispers, it mimics your own thoughts, your own words, your own judgment, making it deceptively convincing. It says things like, "You're falling behind, you should have done more, you'll never get this right." It pushes you to try harder, but it never lets you rest. It drives you forward, yet never allows you to feel enough. While it wears the mask of motivation, underneath it is fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of rejection, fear of failing some impossible standard you never consciously agreed to. That voice didn't appear out of nowhere. It was constructed over years of comparison, perfectionism, and unmet expectations. It learned its script from school, social media, critical family members, and your own cycles of self-doubt. Over time, it became automatic, so automatic that you stopped questioning it. You simply listened. The more you listened, the more it shaped your choices. You stopped taking risks. You began to shrink. You started to believe maybe that voice is the real you, but it is not. It is merely a script, written without your permission and entirely rewritable at any time. You cannot silence that voice by yelling or arguing with it. That only amplifies it, gives it more airtime. You quiet it by proving it wrong, not with grand gestures, but with small, deliberate acts of courage, by showing up on messy days, by taking one more step when it insists you will fail, by choosing to value progress over perfection. Perfection is a lie the inner critic uses to freeze you. If it convinces you that anything short of flawless is failure, it wins. But the moment you embrace motion over mastery, you begin starving that voice. You don't need it to vanish to start. You start with it present, and in doing so, you chip away at its authority. Each time you act, despite the fear and doubt, you generate evidence, lived proof that the voice is not telling the full story. The more evidence you create, the quieter it becomes. Not because it disappears, but because your attention has shifted. Your focus moves to a new voice, one rooted in experience, not fear. This voice will not be flawless. It may hesitate, but it will feel different. It will sound like kindness, clarity, like having your own back. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Perhaps that is why the inner critic exists, to prevent that acceptance. Once you fully embrace yourself, the good and the flawed, the messy and the unfinished, you become unshakable. The critic loses its leverage when there is nothing left to shame. Of course, the voice will return when you are tired, stretched thin, when you fail or fall short. It may whisper, 'See, you never changed,' but now you know better. You will know that failure does not define you, it informs you. One bad day does not undo all the steps you've taken. And in that knowing, peace emerges. Not perfect peace, but the kind that comes from trusting yourself even when everything is imperfect. You owe that voice no explanation. You do not need to justify your pace, your growth, to anyone, especially not to the version of yourself shaped by fear. What matters is how you show up now. What matters is that you continue to try, to learn, to care, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Every time you do, you prove one vital truth: you are not the voice in your head. You are the one who decides what to do next. Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that is the inner critic's specialty, creating imagined fears and dressing them up as truth. But when you see this, when you realize how much of your suffering was built on stories never real, you reclaim your power. You begin to live, not merely survive. You create, speak, try, and grow. Not because the voice vanished, but because it no longer dictates how you spend your days. And that's the point. The goal isn't to erase the inner critic, but to starve it, to stop feeding it your energy, your attention, your belief, to construct a life where your actions speak louder than the noise, a life where your worth isn't measured by perfection, but by presence, by effort, by intention. That voice may always exist like static in the background. But you don't have to tune in. You can decide which channel to follow, and that choice, made consistently day after day, becomes your freedom. Not instant, not explosive, but steady, quiet, and profoundly powerful. You could be in the most tranquil place on earth, no traffic, no interruptions, no deadlines, no demands, and still feel like you're drowning, because stillness isn't about silence outside, it's about quiet inside. And that is far harder to achieve. Your environment may be calm, but if your mind is racing, if your thoughts are shouting over one another, if you are trapped in loops of what if and what was, even the quietest place feels deafening. This is the trap most people fall into. They pursue external peace, believing it will calm the storm within. But peace isn't found. It is practiced. Real stillness is intentional. It doesn't appear only when everything is perfect. It shows up when you stop needing everything to be perfect to begin with. Stillness isn't found in silence. It is created. You create it by learning to sit with yourself, not to run, distract, or fix, but simply to be. And that is when the shift begins. When you stop fleeing your mind, you finally give yourself a chance to understand it. We live in a world that glorifies constant movement. We are conditioned to believe that doing more equals being more. So when we pause, even for a moment, we feel guilty, unproductive, behind. But what if the most valuable act you could do is nothing at all? Not laziness, not indifference, but presence. True, grounded presence. Sitting still, breathing slowly, noticing your thoughts without chasing them. That is not avoidance. That is courage. That is awareness. That is mastery. It doesn't come easily. The moment you sit in stillness, your mind will try to fill the space. Old memories, unfinished tasks, buried fears, all will rise, and that is the point. Stillness is not about avoiding the noise. It is about facing it without flinching. You sit with whatever appears, and instead of running, you listen. Not to judge, not to react, but to understand. This is the kind of stillness that changes people, the kind that strengthens from the inside out. Seneca wrote, "True, happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." It is in stillness that we finally understand this, because when you are still, the future loses its grip. You stop living for tomorrow, you stop replaying yesterday, and you begin to experience the only moment you have, this one, the breath you are taking right now. The sensation of being alive without needing to do, fix, or prove anything. It takes practice. You must return to it daily, not as a task, but as a gift to yourself. 5 minutes, 10, no music, no scrolling, no stimulation, just breath, just awareness. And in that brief window, your nervous system begins to reset, your thoughts slow. You begin to see clearly what stress had blurred. Over time, that clarity extends into your life, into conversations, into choices. You become less reactive, more present, more centered. Stillness becomes a compass, a quiet reminder that you are not your impulses, that you don't have to answer every thought, that you don't have to rush every moment. When stillness lives inside you, chaos no longer shakes you in the same way. You will still face pressure, uncertainty, loss. But instead of being thrown off, you respond with presence, patience, and power. Your sense of peace no longer depends on what happens around you. It lives within. Carl Jung believed that silence helps a person discover what lies in their soul. And that is exactly what stillness is. A mirror. A chance to see yourself without distraction, without noise, without masks. And what you see isn't always comfortable, but it is real. From that reality, growth begins. Most people never give themselves this chance. They fill every empty space with something. They fear boredom, but what they truly fear is meeting themselves, afraid of the questions that may surface, the truths that may rise. But until you face them, they control you quietly. They influence your choices, your relationships, your distractions. Stillness is not just peace, it is power. It brings everything hidden into the light. And when you know yourself deeply, when you have faced your own mind, the world outside feels less threatening. You become less desperate for noise, less addicted to stimulation, less pulled by every problem, because you have already stood at the center of your storm and learned to breathe. You have built something solid within yourself, something no one can give you and no one can take away. So give yourself that time, not someday, not after you finish everything else on your list, but right now. A few quiet moments, a secluded corner, a deep, intentional breath. Let your thoughts rise. Let your body release its tension. Let your mind settle naturally, not through force, but through patience. And in that space, you'll discover more than just peace. You'll discover yourself. Not the version shaped by stress, pressure, or expectation, but the one that has always existed, quietly waiting to be acknowledged. Stillness is not an indulgence, it is essential. In a world that never pauses, stillness is how you reconnect with who you are, and from that awareness, you begin to act not from reaction, but from alignment. Not in the chaos of noise, but in the clarity of understanding. Not from fear, but from truth. Your mind doesn't just passively record your experiences, it actively constructs your reality from them. And the raw material it relies on most isn't reality itself, it's attention. Whatever you focus on repeatedly, whether peace or pain, fear or gratitude, your mind starts shaping itself around it. It doesn't judge what is useful or harmful, it simply adapts. This is the quiet, subtle power of attention. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks, but it quietly designs your inner world. And once you understand that, you realize that mental clarity isn't achieved by thinking harder. It emerges from looking in the right direction. If your focus constantly lingers on what's broken, what's missing, what feels wrong, your mind becomes highly skilled at finding more of it. Not because that is all that exists, but because you've trained it to see that first. The brain builds patterns through repetition. Focus becomes habit, habit becomes identity, and identity eventually becomes the lens through which you perceive every experience. That's why some people always seem trapped in their problems. It isn't because their life is worse, it's because their attention is habitually fixed on what hurts. But that same mechanism works in your favor too. Shift your attention even slightly toward what is healing, toward what is working, toward small, quiet moments of significance, and you begin constructing new mental pathways. You start noticing what was once invisible, the rhythm of your breath, the subtle kindness in someone's eyes, the tiny victories you had overlooked. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending life is perfect. It's about intentionally choosing what deserves your attention. Because not everything does. You don't need to force yourself into positivity. You don't need to battle every negative thought. You only need to guide your focus gently, deliberately, consistently. There is a profound difference. And when you practice this daily, even for just a few minutes, you start reclaiming your energy, because attention is energy. Where your attention goes, your life begins to follow. You don't need to have all the answers to take the next step. You only need the courage to begin exactly as you are, right where you are. Clarity is not something that waits for you. It is something you earn by moving through the fog. Let this be your moment to stop waiting and start becoming. And if this message resonated with you, there's another video right here that will guide you even deeper. Thank you for being here.